Tim, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Special presentation. Scott Dring. Evening, Scott. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you. How's everyone?
We're doing great. Thank you.
We are here tonight and excited to announce that the Bureau has formed a unique strategic alliance that is going to help ensure the future success of not only Bridge Park, but historic Dublin as well. The alliance will work closely together to collaborate and leverage resources for sales and marketing purposes. I think we all believe that it's critical not only for Dublin residents to learn more about this great destination that you've helped create, but also attract residents from Central Ohio, from the state of Ohio, and the entire region as well. The Bureau met with each of these partners to gain support and consensus for this collaboration, and we have a commitment from all of them, from each of them on their efforts to collaborate and work together as one. We're here tonight. If you don't mind, I'd like to introduce them to all of you. Obviously, ourselves, the Dublin Convention and Visitors Bureau, we're going to kind of lead the effort. Frank Wilson, who's your city council rep to the board, is here. The city of Dublin, of course, being a critical partner. Crawford Hoying, Ted Orr is back there, the marketing director. You guys all know Ted. The Historic Dublin Business Association. Rick Gerber couldn't be here yet, another engagement, but Christina Wentz is here as well to help us out. The Dublin Arts Council, David Guillen is back there as well. And then finally, the Dublin Historical Society, and Tom Holden is here to help us out as well. I can tell you that this isn't just a bunch of lip service that we're going to say something and you'll never hear from us again. We are anxious to get started. We've actually engaged a strategic marketing partner here in Dublin called Peebles Group. They're actually here as well, and we have Doug, Laura, and Libby back there in the back row. We're all back in the cheap seats for whatever reason back there. But they are going to work with us. They've already started work with us to really create a really aggressive sales and marketing plan, do a lot of research. It'll include tactics, messages, timelines, metrics on exactly what this whole collaborative effort will look like. I can tell you that the plan will be created and finished in the next 2 months, and we're going to start executing January 1. So we're not wasting a whole lot of time at all to get going on this. We thank you again for all your vision and leadership that all of you have done over the years to really help ensure the future success of our city. We are confident that the new exciting developments on both sides of the Scioto River will enhance the existing vibrancy of downtown Dublin and enrich the future economic development. We want to do our part to help you guys, to support you guys, to make sure that this area, this new world-class destination, is indeed a thriving metropolis and something that will bring economic jobs and tourism to the city of Dublin. I know Dana and Michelle included a memo in your packet that gives a little more detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions as well that you might have.
Council, any questions?
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So Scott, is this encompassed in the funding increase that happened last year?
Correct. I think if you recall, one of our 3 deliverables to all of you for that funding increase was a national sales effort, which we hired a national sales manager with that, a regional campaign, which we went to our markets in Pittsburgh, Detroit, Indianapolis, Lexington, and so forth. And the third one is to really begin to figure out a way to help support Bridge Park and historic Dublin and really begin to look at how we can market and sell this new area.
So you feel like you have the funding that you need to
Absolutely.
carry on? Very good.
Thank you.
And you expect maybe coming back around first of the year and letting us know?
We do. We will have a specific planning in to show you, and we're anxious to get started. So we're not going to wait around. The plan will really be probably a 12 to 24-month plan with different phases as part of the plan. So we need to get going ASAP on this. I mean, you can see there's so much great stuff over there that people need to learn about and get the word out on.
Great. Good luck. We look forward to it.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
Thank you.
Citizen comments, and I don't know that I had any. None? No citizen comments. Anyone here this evening that would like to comment on something that's not on the agenda? Okay, consent agenda. Does any council member want to remove any of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items that are on the consent agenda? 6?
6 at this point. The resolution was removed. relating to Corma?
I'm sorry, I was distracted. So you're on consent, the Bexley?
Yeah,
Yes.
49.
Yes, that's, we got notified through Karma today that Bexley withdrew. So we do not need to,
So
Okay,
there's
we
just
will
6
be
items
pass a
here.
resolution.
withdrawing 49-16, and I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the 6 remaining items. Is there a second?
Second.
Ann?
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner? Yes. Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Second reading public hearing ordinance is ordinance 26-16. Ann?
Adopting the 5-year capital improvements plan.
Angel?
Good evening, members of council. We are requesting approval of the 5-year capital improvement program this evening. After our Finance Committee meeting held in August, we had one follow-up question from Councilmember Ambrose Grooms related to the city's debt. That information was provided in your packet, so I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Otherwise, we are requesting approval this evening.
Council questions?
Angel, I noted on Exhibit A, on the second page, the debt service schedule. If I did the math right, it looks like about 30% of our debt there will be retired over the next 5 years. So that's a fair amount of that total coming out of there in relatively quick time.
That is correct.
Actually, but the original amount of 19 million comes out next 2 years, in 2018, so thank you.
One quick question, Angel, so I understand this chart. Is the unvoted bonds on the top and the number that you have corresponding, that then corresponds to the where it is supported by at the bottom?
Correct. In fact, all of the different issues that we have are footnoted against the type of revenue that goes to repay the debt service.
Okay, so there is
Well,
only one source of support from each type of bond?
In most cases, yes. So whenever our projects are eligible to be funded through TIF service payments, we would shift that payment over from income tax to TIF service payments. But to be conservative, we bank on income tax until those service payments materialize, and then we utilize those TIF revenues.
Okay, so some of the number ones may shift to a number 4 at some point?
Yes, they could.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
I have a few questions. First of all, thank you for providing the memo. It's very well done, and the numbers are, I appreciate the time and effort it took to put that together. I have a couple of concerns I'd like to share with my fellow council members. As I went through these original amounts of unvoted bonds that we'd issued, come up with in the neighborhood of around $250 million in bonds that we've issued. And if I'm reading all of this information correctly, it looks like this year we're projected to issue somewhere in the neighborhood of $55 million in bonds. From the information that was provided, it appears that in 2015, we issued about $91 million in bonds, which those two added together are about $146 million. Of the $250 million that we have recorded that we have issued bonds. To me, that represents a lot of pretty fast spending in 700 days or thereabouts. You know, we're looking at spending a significant percentage of the bonds that we've issued in recent history, and that causes me a tremendous amount of concern, as I stated in our workshop. Another thing that concerns me about this is about 90% of those bonds that were issued are for work that either happened or will be happening in roughly 6% or 6 blocks of our city, or in Bridge Street, which represents only 6% of our city. As I read through the documents of the proposed CIP for debt financing, in 2021, it leaves us with a debt capacity of 38 million plus some change. This CIP, I think, is full of wonderful projects. My questions and my thoughts aren't reflective of of the projects themselves. I think any city across the country would be thrilled to have these projects going on in their community. But I have a tremendous amount of concern at the rate at which we're spending and on the small area of our city that benefits from them. So I would like to know if any of you have any similar concerns, or, you know, I am very concerned of having a debt capacity, additional residual debt capacity of just over $38 million in 2021. Our city has always prided itself of being able to step up when there's a big opportunity or a big problem. And I think that we're diminishing our ability to do that. Not because the projects aren't worth it. Again, I hope that you can hear that. I think they're wonderful projects. I just don't know that all of them have to happen in such short order. And I have a great amount of concern for, you know, attributing $146 million in 700 days. Apparently, I'm the only one that has that concern, so go ahead.
Yes, I would add that we've gone through the rating process with Standard & Poor's, S&P, over and over and over again, year in, year out, and we have the AAA rating. There's no higher level of rating than we're going to find anywhere. They look very, very carefully at what we spend, what our capacity is, what our revenues are, and, you know, what project would we not do? Should we not have done the I-270-33? Should we not have done Bridge Park? I think we're blessed with the opportunity to be able to do these kinds of projects. It's been done in a very forthright, thoughtful manner, and I'm very, very comfortable with what we've done and thankful that we have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I guess for me, you know, you reference the idea of being able to step up when there's a big opportunity, and that's the way I view the spending in this capital budget. This is the big opportunity. We, you know, and as Mike said, it's not reckless. It's very thoughtful and done, you know, conservatively, thoughtfully, and with the support of our bond counsel and, you know, some of the best municipal financial experts in the country.
So what would be some of your thoughts as to how you could feel more comfortable about the way that we're proceeding through this? Can we accomplish that in the next CIP workshop to talk through some of these things? Because if you take a look at the new debt, there's, you know, the Riverside Park on here, there's the bridge, there's the library parking deck, and the historic district. So, I mean, are there things that you would propose that we would shift or change, or do you just want to have some more discussion about it? Which I think that we should all at least be open to, so that we have some level of comfort in where we're headed.
Right,
So just
you
curious
know,
as to, you know, how we can, you know, talk it through with you.
certainly, you know, we're in this coming year, we're looking at nearly $55 million. Again, they're all good projects. They're, you know, who wouldn't like to have an iconic pedestrian bridge? Who wouldn't like to have an outdoor ice skating rink with, you know, some outdoor facilities and things like that? It's the culmination of them. It is not any individual one that, for me, is problematic. It's the culmination of all of them happening at one point in time. When I think, when I go back to 2015, you know, that at the time was the most aggressive CIP that we'd ever looked at, or that was kind of the tone of the conversation. And that was again true in 2016 and again true in 2017. And I think it's the, you know, the string of those aggressive CIPs. And again, I respect all of your opinions, and that's the beauty of what we do here is it's a democracy and I'm but one vote. But to keep that pace going is problematic for me.
Yeah, I don't really, Chris, see that pace is going to continue unabated. I think the idea of, and like you've said, all the projects are really important. And yes, you know, we do need a new library parking garage and a new library facility, and it just has come due now. And yes, I think the idea of creating a new city is really important to fit the kind of demographics of the young people that are going to come into this town that we need for our businesses to sustain our tax base. So, and yes, we're changing the entire footprint of the city in 5 years. I mean, it's going to be a whole new city, basically, with a whole new downtown, and I think it's all really exciting. But, you know, having sit here for 18, 19 years, however long it's been, I really have a hard time thinking of, and we've had a lot of interesting projects over the years, but I can't see, knowing what's left of our land, our real estate, how many exciting projects are going to require a heck of a lot of funding in the future, other than maybe Post Road and a few other things. So, I mean, it was sort of weird and yet fortuitous that it would all happen in this short time period, that all these things needed to get done and are getting done, and, you know, 33 is a wreck and was really overcrowded and was really a traffic hazard, and, you know, the downtown traffic circle and everything else that we've been doing was really required. So I don't think anybody here is running amok in spending monies.
I didn't, please don't think that I said that, because I certainly did not.
No, I know, but I just don't want to, you know, people to think that. I think, you know, there's a lot of really exciting things happen that's going to change Dublin's future and keep us probably the preeminent city that we are of all the suburbs. And so I just, you know, no. And I do feel that the same things you're talking about, the fact that, hey, you know, we're spending a lot of money in a short term.
We're spending our future income.
Yeah, but, you know, it is time to really adjust some of these things. Our old downtown was, you know, 3 or 4 blocks in either direction, and not much of a urban core that you, like maybe Worthington had, or, you know, Westerville has a beautiful urban core, and we just really didn't have any, and you know, things were pointing that if we were going to stay abreast of bringing in the young people who who we need to work here, that we had to make some modifications, and I just think we worked on all that really hard. And it was interesting that in 5 years, we went from planning stage to seeing this thing rise up out of the ground down there. So I think we share your concerns, though. So.
And I appreciate what you said, Chris, and I think your point is a good one, it's a valid one. It's important to stay vigilant in the process that's gone through to come up with this CIP, and I agree with you, there's a substantial amount of money that's being spent here in the short, or was engaged in a relatively quick period of time. But one of the things that I'm the most proud of this council doing is this sewer system improvement extensions. That's on here. I mean, you make a very valid point that we need to remain vigilant. And for me, when it comes to money, as long as Angel and Dana are comfortable with it, and not to minimize that, but even more importantly, the bond rating, those bond rating agencies that are going to put out to the market what these bonds are worth, as long as they're still on board, and it seems as though they are, then, you know, a lot of work goes into the CIP. I think your points are all valid, and every time any money is spent, we need to remain vigilant. But the points that Amy and John and Mike have made, have been here programming Bridge Street, are good ones, and I think there's a lot of projects that are in here that are good ones. And so for me, I'm comfortable with it because the financial people and the rating agencies are good with it. So.
And I would echo that sentiment, Greg. I'm not the only one, but I've certainly repeatedly asked staff to comment on the impact to our ratings by the ratings agencies. And, you know, that's certainly a concern of mine. You know, and I would point out, as I pointed out before, that a majority of this council up here is the same council that has been responsible in large part for our budgets over the last, you know, 15-plus years that have resulted in record reserves, and placed us in a position that we can do what we're doing right now. You know, one great example is how we moved up the I-270-33 interchange, you know, because we had that kind of money in our reserves that we could advance, what was it, $25 million. You know, that project wouldn't be occurring right now. We wouldn't be looking at its imminent completion, you know, if not for the wise budgeting decisions that a majority of this council has made over the last 15 years. So having said that, I don't mean to minimize your concerns.
We may not afford in the future, but
I'm sorry?
I appreciate that. I completely hear you. That's a luxury with, you know, only a bonding capacity of $38 million that who knows? It's a crystal ball, right? And none of us see very clearly into it, and I appreciate all of your perspectives, and just wanted to share mine.
Go ahead, Tiff.
Yeah, if I could. I wanted to talk about the sidewalks. There was something in the memo. Staff was looking for direction with respect to a sidewalk assessment. I would support that, at least I believe you were. Maybe not.
You meant sidewalk inspection?
You're talking about the maintenance, that's in the.
I mean inspecting.
You said assessment, I want to make.
No, I
It's
don't.
not an,
All right.
it's not an,
Intended to be
it's not an assessment like
They're
that
going to
kind
said
of,
assess their
assessment.
condition.
but not that kind of assessment.
Okay, yeah.
Assessing their condition.
Assessing the condition
Yes.
of the sidewalks,
It was
as in
in-
inspection.
That kind
Thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
Gee, Megan, that would make you the most popular person.
Didn't want the phones ringing tomorrow,
I
so.
was like, whoa.
Thank you. Somewhere in here, it says a comprehensive citywide sidewalk condition assessment was performed, okay?
Right.
All right, all right. So that's what I'm commenting on. You know, to the extent that staff was asking for that direction, you know, I would support and ask council to support staff undertaking that citywide sidewalk condition assessment. And also, I don't know whether we're to this place yet or not. You know, staff has commented over the years that Dublin is the only city that undertakes the repair of its sidewalks, its public sidewalks, and does not assess the homeowner. And I don't, you know, have we completed that study with respect to whether that assertion is actually true? And have we also looked into legal liability when a street tree, which has been planted by the city, and its shallow roots cause the sidewalk to heave, how does that become the homeowner's responsibility?
We're actually looking into both of those issues now. I've had some conversations with some of my counterparts in the region, and I'm gaining some of that information, and I've also asked legal to look into the tree root issue, and that was part of the reason why I suggested that perhaps in 2017, staff could take another look at all the sidewalks in the city and take a fresh look at this whole issue, and then bring back all that information in a package in time for discussions for the next round of CIP discussions.
And might that also include, and I've commented on this a number of times, with respect to the oversight the city exercises at the point of installation? I mean, again, I've shared where, you know, I've seen sidewalks. My personal experience, I've got a side, there's no street tree, and the sidewalk heaved within the first 10 years, you know, which suggests to me, you know, that there was an issue with installation. And where we're ultimately paying on the back end, you know, which is a policy that I support, okay, you know, what, if staff could look into, you know, what, if anything more, we could be doing on the front end, you know, to try to ensure, you know, that we don't have these kinds of, we don't experience these kind of failures.
We can include that type of information in the report,
I'd
along
appreciate
with
it.
the inspection or assessment information.
Thank you.
You know, Megan, you know what might be helpful too? As new developments come in, there are the kind of underground tree guards that you plant with your trees to keep the roots from heaving the sidewalks. And maybe we look at some of those details and include them in our planning department, just to get out of this whole issue of buying everybody free sidewalks. And so, yeah, I suggest we take a good look at something like that and maybe utilize that, get us out of this in the future. And another thing is, also, the reason these trees heave up in these situations is the fact that the soil is usually so poor, sometimes it's just jack tamp number 2s, and the tree has no other choice but to come up for oxygen and stuff. So I don't know if it's specifications in the development department that might be improved that say, okay, when you're doing a street tree planting, you have to actually put real topsoil in around the tree so that the tree doesn't come up and disturb its exterior environment. So just little things like that, tweaking those might be a big improvement to
Yeah,
the
and I know
community.
forestry staff has updated the type of trees or modified the types of trees that they specify over the years as well, so.
Yeah, but there's two things that you could look at possibly changing.
The third would be to increase the distance from the street to the sidewalk, to add, more room for a root ball of tree.
Okay.
Some of them get pretty narrow, some of them are 4 feet or so, it gets pretty tight.
We'll write down all of those items and be sure to include those in the report.
Thank you.
Anything else? Amy, you got anything?
Could I just comment on something Councilmember Lucklider said related to our bond rating? I am in constant communication with our financial advisors, and certainly as we approach issuing debt, we take a look at those 10 mil limitations, the statutory limitations, and if I ever felt that the city was in a position where our rating could be jeopardized, we would come forward and discuss it with you first. There are certainly, you don't want the rating to be the end-all, be-all, because sometimes there's a reason why you move forward with something, and there's components of a rating that are out of our control, as we discussed during the CIP workshop. So I want to make sure that you're aware that when we presented to the rating agencies, both Moody's and Fitch, last fall, in preparation for that bond issue, we did present to them at that time, the 2016 through 2020 CIP, which had many of the projects, if not all of the projects that we were contemplating debt financing outlined. So there's really nothing new that would be surprising to them, maybe just some tweaks in timing or tweaks in terms of dollar amounts as estimates get more refined. That's not to say their rating was based on future projections. So it's always, they take that into consideration looking forward, but certainly it's based on the merits of that bond issue in and of itself. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. And also to John's point about the investments that we're making in the city and likely wouldn't be ongoing, I look back at the history of Dublin, and we made a significant investment during the growth in the 90s in roadways and different infrastructure improvements that made Dublin what it is today. And to Mike's point, a lot of that debt is now rolling off, and I see this as really the pendulum swinging again. We're reinvesting into the community. We've made a decision council has made the decision over the course of the past couple of years and moving forward in this CIP to invest in some very iconic projects. I don't expect that these are really to kickstart some of the redevelopment and development within Bridge Street. I hope that we can take a step back, get some of those TIF revenues generating revenue to pay those debt service. Also, my last point is in relation to the 2015 bond issue. Please recall that approximately $47 million of that, the two $16 million parking garages and the $11.1 million roadway network, all were, in essence, covered by a minimum service payment guarantee. So while the Exhibit A that I showed you simply outlines the city's existing debt, there are a number of these that have revenue sources to pay that debt. So that is a very specific example of recent transactions that have occurred where we've structured the deal in such a way that it's not our general obligation income tax or property tax revenue, it's non-tax revenue that's pledged that's backed by that minimum service payment guarantee.
So I wanted to make it clear, too, that when you talk, let's just use a $10 million bond issue, for instance. So when you talk about $100 million or $150 million of bonds, it is a lot of money, there's no question about it. But we're leveraging our ability to borrow this money at interest rates that are an all-time low, number one. That probably hasn't been a better time in many, many years in terms of doing that. These $10 million bond issue might be paid back over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever the issue is. And what do they range from typically, from 5 or 10 years to 30?
Traditionally, our bonds have been 20-year.
So
We
to
went out to
that
30
end,
on
that $10 million, we're leveraging that with a payment, an annual payment plus an interest charge over that 10-year period. It's not like we're spending $150 million this year. I guess I want to make that clear. If the public hears this discussion and thinks, oh my gosh, they just spent $200 million. Well, it's really, some of that's pledged with future tax revenues, and we know that. And we all feel very comfortable with that. So just to be clear, I wanted to make that comment.
And I'd like to be clear, too, that my thoughts aren't because I think there's any shortage in the documents and that their quality isn't high and that the research hasn't been sound. I want to make sure that everyone understands that that's not my thinking at all. The parking garages are a 30-year note, the balance of them are mostly 20-year notes, and that's a lot of money for a long time, and that's what causes me pause on that, and I just want to make sure that you hear that from me.
I completely understand.
I just also, because there was a reference made to unvoted versus voted bonds, either Angel or Dana, if you could comment on, I don't know whether there was an implication or not, but I don't believe that Dublin is unique in issuing these bonds, these so-called unvoted bonds. I mean, not to mention the fact that to the extent that you might say that they're unvoted, I wouldn't call them unvoted because Dublin voted for us. That's right. And we are making the decisions, and that is our responsibility. But
Right.
having said that, could you comment?
Sure. So the debt that you see under the voted bonds, those projects were identified and taken forward to the voters to be able to be assessed property tax revenue in order to pay those bonds. We have not done that. We've paid those directly from income tax revenues. So the ability is there. That's what you get from a voted bond, is the ability to increase your property tax effective rate to cover the payment for those, but we haven't had to do that. But it's certainly something, whenever we're looking at bond issues, depending on, should it be a general obligation pledge? Should it be voted? Should it be an income tax pledge? Should it be water or sewer? All of those things need to be taken into consideration and discussed moving forward to see what's best for the city. But at the time, I wasn't here at that time, but these were approved by the voters, but we have never had to go back and put anything additional on the property tax bill.
So just to try to nudge us forward, I think that what the comments here that have been made are all really high-quality comments. I think these projects are great projects. I don't think anyone here denies that. I certainly appreciate Chris's trepidation in terms of the amount of money from a debt perspective in the relatively short amount of time. I also understand that, projects ebb and flow. And to Mike's point, there's been no cheaper time to issue debt than the time that we've been in. So we've been, I think, really blessed in that we've had these projects that require this debt financing come across our plate at a great time to finance debt. But I also think that, to Chris's point, it's a good thing for us to watchdog ourselves, right? To say, hey, we've got these projects, are we headed in the right direction? And to always have that question in the back of our minds, particularly when we're going through CIP workshops. So I just think that that's something that we need to do for ourselves so that we are being held in check for the people who did vote us to sit up here. So I very much appreciate that, as well as I appreciate all the comments that you've all made. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of wrap it up just a little bit, acknowledging what everyone said. And certainly the quality of the work that you've put forth, Angel, is second to none, as always. So very, very much appreciate that. Particularly as a new person sitting up here, it's been very helpful. Good? Thanks.
Everybody good? Ann?
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
No.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 30-16, Ann?
Amending Section 153.059 of the City of Dublin Codified Ordinances to amend the Bridge Street District zoning regulations to add religious or public assembly as a conditional/size limited use in the BSD Office Residential District.
You're not Claudia.
I am not Claudia, no. I'm a stand-in for her. She had a prior engagement.
Welcome.
So. I will do my best to be Claudia, though, as much as
All right.
possible.
Fair enough.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This ordinance was introduced at the August 22nd meeting. There were no questions at that time, and therefore no changes have been made to this ordinance. Staff is recommending approval of this code amendment, and I'm available for any questions if you may have them.
Council, any questions? No questions. No questions? Ann?
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ordinance 31-16,
Authorizing the adoption of a debt policy.
Angel?
Thank you. The administration is requesting approval of the STEP policy, which was previously reviewed as part of the August 10th Finance Committee, as well as during the first reading on August 22nd. There are no changes to what was originally proposed at first reading.
Chris?
I just have one question about this, and I apologize because I didn't pick it up at the first reading, and when the language was added to the 3216, it brought my attention to this more. Trying to remember exactly. It's the waiver portion, yes. The waiver has a requirement in it that the administration recommends and city council concurs that it is in the best interest of the city to waiver the existing policy. And I don't think that's the spirit of our charter, and I don't think that's the spirit of our elected officials that staff and council have to concur. I think if that is council's decision to direct something, then that is how, and maybe I'm reading it wrong.
So from the perspective from which we wrote this, so in the charter under 504E, the city manager is required to submit budgets and capital budgets. Council does not submit budgets. So from my perspective, this is reflective of council always having the authority at all times to say yay or nay to the budget, be it an in-stride budget you want to modify or change during the course of the year, or the approval of a budget, hence the CIP or the operating budget, whenever we present that, that you would agree to, modify, or a combination thereof that budget. So this was written from the perspective of typically it's the administration bringing forward budget or bringing forward a budget modification, knowing that you always have the
I
right
think I
to
know
change
what we're
that
trying to
budget.
say, and I think
So-
that's a little bit of what it says, maybe a little bit different than what we're trying to say.
Sure.
I think it's appropriate that staff always bring forward the budgets
Right.
and present them, but it's the concurrence of
Yeah.
the waiver portion that is
And that's the
causing.
perspective from which we wrote it. I mean, obviously, if you wanted to change that language,
Dana, what if we did this, just as a suggestion, if everybody's looking at the language, if we removed the words, "the administration recommends and changed the word concurs to concludes, and then it just read, "The city may deviate from the requirements of the general fund balance policy when city council concludes that it is in the best interest of the city to do so." Then the next sentence goes to exactly what you're saying, that when the administration presents a financial proposal to city council, it will identify any areas that are not compliant with the general fund balance policy. I get what you're saying, I understand, but it sort of caught my attention as well, that it kind of, the way that it reads is if the administration has to first recommend it, and then city council has to approve it, as opposed to city council, the administration perhaps not taking a position on it.
And then not necessarily all the cases. I mean, again, from our perspective, yeah, we're presenting it. I think if we really want to go to the point that's being made, I would, not that I disagree with what you said, we could certainly go that route. I would just say the city may deviate from the requirements of this general fund balance policy as determined by city council. Either
that's
that, or
I
just
think
get,
that-
or just get rid of the whole section.
No, I like the section
I like
in
the
there.
section. I want the waiver ability for the waiver.
Got it.
I'm good with what you said or with what Greg said. Both of them get, I think, to
Yeah.
what we're trying to do.
I-
I just
we could
think
go either way.
what the words say and what we're trying to do are two different things.
However you want to do it, it's fine with us. Whatever you're comfortable with. Gets to the same point.
Does anybody have a problem with either of those two approaches, or a concern?
Can you read that again so we have it?
Jennifer,
Yeah, let's go with what they're
do
suggesting.
you have a recommendation?
And this is for both of the policies?
Correct.
Yeah,
Can you-
I think Chris.
Can you hold for just a second and let us
Sidebar.
confer?
So my preference would be that we just leave it, that one sentence that says, "The city may deviate from the requirements of the STEP policy when city council concludes that it's in the best interest of the city to do so." The reason I say that is if city council were to propose and vote on something that maybe the administration doesn't agree with, it would be difficult for us to come forward explaining the reasons for that, when maybe your reasons for voting that way might be contrary to what our belief it would be.
Could you read
Not
that
to
one
look
more
for
time?
an
I'm
out,
sorry,
but-
Angel.
And therein lies sort of the checks and balance of this whole thing. I mean, we would always, I hope you would want us to reserve the right to say, yeah, we agree or disagree, but say, and vice versa. So. But you have the ultimate authority in the
Can
decision.
you read that again? What you just said?
So I would propose that we say the city may deviate from the requirements of the STEP policy when city council concludes that it is in the best interest of the city to do so, period.
I'm fine with that. I think that
And there's no second sentence then.
gets to the heart of what we're trying to do.
Okay.
And isn't the outcome the same?
It is in effect.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jennifer, do we have to amend this, or can you?
No, what we can do is approve the ordinance with the amendment
with the
as
amended
read into the
language?
record.
One time, one vote?
Yep.
And we can do it, we vote twice.
Right,
on
you're going to
each
have to do it for
step.
both policies.
Does anybody have any, Chris, do you have any other comment on that?
No, I appreciate your help. And, whenever we're writing policy, we're not writing it for us, right? We're writing it for the people that come after us. We know what we're trying to do, but we just need language that's clear when we're not here.
Do you have your button pushed, Tim? Do you have a comment?
I'm just ready to vote.
Okay. In that vein.
Mr. Lucklider,
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner.
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Salee.
Yes.
Mr. Keenan. Ms. Aludo.
Yes.
And then ordinance 32-16?
Ms. Ambrose Grooms.
As amended, yes.
Mayor Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Aludo.
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider.
Yes.
Ms. Salee. Vice Mayor Reiner.
Yes.
And Mr. Keenan.
Ordinance 33-16?
Vacating a 0.016 acre more or less of Dale Drive as a public road in the city of Dublin, County of Franklin, State of Ohio.
Jennifer?
Good evening, council. We're finalizing the transfer of property the city currently owns to CODA, as was authorized by the previously approved real estate purchase agreement. This agreement required the city to vacate a small portion of right-of-way that's adjacent to the southwest corner of the parcel. This notch is not encumbered by any roadway or related city improvements. This legislation is required by Franklin County to record the vacation as well as by the real estate purchase agreement. It will create a consistent right-of-way line that conforms to current conditions. Staff recommends approval of ordinance 3316 this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? None? Ann?
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
First reading is ordinance 34-16.
Amending the annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2016.
Angel?
Thank
I'll
you.
introduce it.
As council is aware, on occasion, it is necessary for us to bring forward legislation that amends the annual appropriation to take into account unexpected or unbudgeted items. Additionally, any contractual obligations that the city has previously entered into, many of those going through council for approval. So ordinance number 34-16 does just that. The first section relates to funding within the city's general fund. Specifically, we are requesting additional funding for background checks that were implemented for volunteers this year, costs associated with increased building activity, as well as income tax refunds. With respect to the building request, these additional dollars being requested are offset by revenue received by the city as a result of the increase in building activity. Section 2 appropriates funding within the State Highway Fund for previously approved ordinance approved by City Council in July for property acquisition needed for the Dublin Road-Glick Road intersection improvement. Section 3 appropriates additional funding for the France Road Utility Burial Project. 4 appropriates funding from the Upper Metro TIF for costs associated with the 33-161, as well as the Post Road France Road intersection improvements, including the intersection alternative analysis study. Section 5 appropriates funding from the Bridge Street District TIF for costs related to the Columbus Metropolitan Library parking structure and advancing those discussions and designs. Section 6 appropriates funding from the sewer construction funds. The funds that are within this fund are from bonds that were previously issued for sewer improvements. So therefore, this action and this appropriation is simply taking the money that is sitting in the fund that we had issued the debt on and putting in the expense account so that we can make payment for the contracts associated with those projects. And finally, Section 7 appropriates funding within our agency fund, which are funds that the city holds or collects for other agencies. The amount being requested is for payment of sewer taps, and again, which is related to the development activity, which generates revenue to offset this payment to the city of Columbus. Staff requests that council approve this ordinance at their next meeting on September 26th.
Questions from council?
Angela, I just have one question. I know that we do a cost basis for inspections and things of that nature when we receive permits, and the $250,000 being requested for building standards. So when someone applies for a permit, does that money not get deposited into that account? Is that why there's a shortfall? Does that go deposit into a different account, and now we have to send it back over?
So there's two different sides of the equation. There's revenue, and all of our revenue gets deposited into our revenue ledger. That doesn't automatically translate into an authorized expenditure. So the expenditure is based initially on the budget that's approved by council in December. So those two really don't talk throughout the course of the year. You've got to take measures to appropriate additional funds if your revenue's up to.
That was my hunch.
jack the
I just didn't know for
expenditure.
certain, so I appreciate that. Maybe when it comes back for second reading, could we, I know every so often we make sure that our permit fees are in line with our cost of doing said permits.
Certainly, we
Can
are
we-
actually undergoing our cost of services study. It's done every other year.
Okay.
And then the off year, we apply a inflationary CPI index to it. So at a minimum, every other year, we are checking our expenditures, what it costs to issue permits, to do different things, and making sure that the fees that we are charging are appropriate.
That was my hunch. I just needed to know for sure. Thank you.
I just want to point out, Jeff was ready to jump on that grenade for you, Angel. He was coming
He was
up.
at the ready.
Okay. Okay, there'll be a second hearing at our September 20, other councils, questions? There'll be a second hearing at our September 26th meeting. Ordinance 35-16, Ann?
Authorizing provision of certain incentives to O'Brien Robinson Construction Services, Inc., to induce it to retain and expand an office and associated operations and workforce within the city, authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement.
I'll introduce it.
Good evening. So O'Brien Robinson Construction Services has been in Dublin for just under 16 years, and they have been leasing space on Wilcox Place. They have reached the time where they have outgrown that space, and they have been searching throughout central Ohio for a new location where they can take their construction services that they do so well and build themselves a new headquarters. So our staff has been working with them to get them to choose Dublin for that location. So before you tonight and second reading in 2 weeks, when a company rep will be here to answer questions. The proposal includes a $5,000 retention grant, a 4-year, 12% performance incentive that is capped at $10,000. The company would agree to construct a new building of at least 10,000 square feet and retain 17 jobs and create 7 new jobs by 2020. And I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Colleen. Questions from council? Okay, we'll have a second hearing at our September 26th council meeting. Resolutions 50-16, Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a cooperative contribution agreement with the city of Columbus for Arterial Street Rehabilitation Sawmill Corridor.
I'll introduce it.
Megan?
Good evening, members of council. Dublin previously initiated a study to investigate the intersection improvement alternatives for Sawmill-Snoffer Road intersection. Columbus has requested that Dublin expand the limits of that study by combining a prior Columbus study that was occurring up north from 270 to Hard Road with this study of Snoffer Road intersection, and then also to extend that study south to 161. The expanded study will include determining conceptual intersection layouts in that corridor, and it'll study that entire corridor. Staff with both Dublin and Columbus entities agree that combining these independent studies into a comprehensive corridor study will be beneficial to both parties. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this resolution. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council?
I think we always end up, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Amy, go ahead.
We always end up in these situations with Columbus, and we always end up spending way more money than they do. And I'm just curious why, if we could understand better why their bill's 98 to 150 and ours is 255, when it's essentially lots of Columbus and, there's Dublin in there, but.
These costs were really determined independent of one another. We already had a contract.
Are we doing a better job with ours, or?
It's just really different work. We already had a contract underway with CH2M Hill to study the Snoffer Road intersection for that set amount. Then we were having conversations with Columbus because they had a previous study looking north of 270. We had a meeting with them. They weren't pleased with the alternatives that their consultant had come up with. They were trying to decide what to do with that project. They actually had federal funding that would help fund the construction of that project, and they have since turned in those funds because they wanted to start over, simply because the alternatives that were identified just weren't going to achieve greater level of service. So in those discussions, we said we need to proceed with our Snoffer Road intersection analysis. They said it would probably make most sense to take a look at the entire corridor. So then we obtained a fee from CH2M Hill for that additional work. So it was not a negotiated amount. It was literally providing scope to the consultant and the consultant providing a fee back.
Okay.
I would like, if I could, I would like to add that we had discussions with the previous administration about trying to get cooperation on some of the design. We leaned into the Snoffer Road intersection improvement as something that, and you may recall those discussions a year plus ago about trying to lean forward on that, knowing that we wouldn't get much assistance from Columbus. I would look at this as going from zero to what we've got now, as opposed to the other way around, because there really was not much coming, I'll call it our way, on the Sawmill corridor study. And then to do this jointly in this fashion, I think is great strides forward, and we want to, actually celebrate the opportunity to work this together and appreciate that they came to us and said, hey, can we tag on and work together? So it was a good change.
I appreciate that information very much. I had to ask. And it sounds like the methodology is solid, and certainly it's better since we are both jointly impacted to do the study together. Is your thought that we'll get a better product and perhaps cooperation with them?
Definitely.
And
They
this is sort of
actually
the
had,
first stage of it?
they were working with a different consultant on the section of roadway north of 270. We have CH2M Hill, and it just didn't make sense to have two different consultants taking a look at the same.
Agreed. Thank you.
Megan, I'm curious, is this limited to engineering only, or does this get into aesthetics? I think when we were talking about this, doing it ourselves, earlier we were talking about an aesthetic improvement on Sawmill Road.
At this point in time, the contract is strictly for preliminary engineering efforts, to take a look at what the solution will be, and then at some point down the road, if we identify an alternative that we want to proceed with, then we would get into that discussion.
If I may, I had a discussion with Steve Shoney, Director of Development, about a year ago on that issue of working together to do some sort of improvement that's more aesthetically oriented. And he was agreeable to the notion of talking to the businesses on the east side of Sawmill Road and had someone on his staff that could start to work that. I think their challenge was going to be, he was pretty blunt about it, at what point on Sawmill would they start that, and at what point of Sawmill would they cut that off? So we have much more dialogue to have with them, but the initial conversation with them is that they would be interested in exploring that.
Yeah, I think it's always been sort of apparent that if you're driving down Sawmill Road, let's say you're going north, that the left side's aesthetically pleasing, the right side is maybe less so. So I was just curious if we were going to include all that into this, but I can see that we'll take it up later on. Thank you.
Mike?
I'd just like to add that I can't think of an area that we really need to be working. We have an asset there in terms of Dublin Village Center that really needs to be utilized. And this study and the potential to put Snoffer Road together is a really big part of the extension of John Shields Parkway, and really trying to get something done over there, because it's just sitting. and it's kind of just, it's just wasting away. And it's a lot of land, it's a lot of area, and I think this is a critical piece. And Amy, I for years have complained about, us always getting the short end of the stick with the cost up at Hearth Road and Tuttle, the other projects, but we really need to get this done.
And it is a very challenging study due to the proximity of Snoffer with the interchange. That's what's going to make it challenging, and it's going to require a lot of coordination with ODOT, too.
Tim?
Thank you. What if anything, is this going to do with respect to the northbound condition on Sawmill Road, north of the interchange?
Both northbound and southbound directions are being studied between 161 and Hard Road as a part of this comprehensive corridor study.
Do you believe that the study is going far enough to the north? I mean, I think it's great that we're extending it down to 161. I occasionally experience the northbound condition, in the evening rush. I don't know that it's not equally bad in the morning on the southbound side, but it's just terrible. I mean, I know that's not a revelation, it's just terrible. And what's going to improve?
Hopefully, the intersections to the north, and I think we know there are problems with the proximity of Billingsley and Sawbury, and, the way that those intersections are signalized and the fact that they impact the northbound condition. And there is a solution, it's just a matter of, what'll it be?
Determining what the solution is.
And then, having it embraced by our neighbors.
Okay, thanks.
There will be some political will.
Ann?
Ms. Salee? Yes. Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Matt, you want to address this thing about Kaufman Park?
Yes, Allison Leroy is going to
Oh,
address
it's Allison. Hi, Allison.
Hello, good evening, members of council. I'm coming to you with this request from the event called Race Across America. This is the 6th year that they've been in Dublin. They expect around 200 people. Their riders ride between 200 and 400 bicycle miles. So they leave here Friday night and then they return on Sunday. And they're just requesting for a small party to have alcohol, just beer, from 1 to 4 on Sunday afternoon. I can take any
from
questions.
council? Where'd Amy go? Any questions? No questions? Ann?
Need a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
I'll
Thanks.
second.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Staff comments, Dana?
Thank you, members of council. Just a couple items. You had quite a few items of interest in your packet. You probably noticed. Obviously, happy to answer any questions you may have about those. Couple items I wanted to point out. The Spooktacular event was addressed in there. Just a reminder to let staff know by October 10th. If you plan to attend that, that'll be helpful so that we can be prepared for your attendance at that. The second thing is just wanted to point out the various information outlooks that we're providing. I think you'll see a new one in there that is from the Planning Division, and have put that in that similar format that we've been reporting on other items. I think these things are finally getting stride, and I hope that they're making good sense to you, but I don't know why, I just wanted to say something about them. I was reading them the other night, and I thought this is a lot of great information, so I'm kind of proud of the team for all the effort that goes into putting that information out there in front of you, and I hope you find it helpful. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Amy, your return is timely. P&Z.
Really don't have anything. We're just pretty much business as usual on the commission.
Which is always busy. Mike, Administrative Committee?
Nothing.
Community Development, John?
Nothing.
Finance, Mike?
Nothing.
Public Services, Amy? Tim, we're going to go through your list here. Morpsey?
Yes, we did have a meeting last Thursday. The Ohio Department of Health, the Director of the Ohio Department of Health, Richard Hodges, spoke to us. The focus of his presentation was regarding opiate addiction, and while it's obviously very unfortunate, I think that Dublin is ahead of the curve with respect to our discussion of the issue and our initiatives. Anyway, it's obviously a problem statewide, and he had some very sad stories to share. Of note, at the meeting was the track application that was submitted by Union County with respect to the 161 Post Road interchange, which Dana spoke to at a previous meeting. So that was really the essence of what was important to us.
Okay, does that include Logan, Union, Champaign County Regional Planning Commission?
There's nothing to report there.
And how about the US 33 Innovation Corridor Group?
Our meeting was canceled last week as we await the different jurisdictions voting on the Crossroads Area Plan.
And on that note, I apologize for texting over here earlier while I'm sitting here, but the city manager of Marysville, Terry Emery, texted me to let me know that Marysville Union Council unanimously passed the Crossroads Area Plan this evening, so just wanted to point that out.
Good news.
One outstanding jurisdiction.
Yes.
Good news. Anything else, Tim?
No, thank you.
Dublin Arts Council, John?
I just want to say that there is the new art exhibit coming up for river boxes, so a chance to actually physically see the river boxes and learn something about them at the Art Center, and I think it's going to be well worth doing. Don't forget October 15th for the Bread Festival, also the birthday of Ann Clark, so we will eat glorified cake in your honor.
We'll get you a loaf of bread, Ann.
Have up the
Thank you.
ante. Board of Education, Chris and Christina?
We kicked off the new school year with our first meeting. Dana and Todd did a nice job giving some updates, talking through some things. We also talked about some items that we might want to discuss in the coming year, which I think we'll formulate a little bit more at our next meeting, which is October 26th. I just wanted to thank Todd for inviting council to the school's convocation. It was pretty interesting to see all the schools represented in the Scioto gym. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I know several of my fellow council members were there as well.
Okay. Washington Township, I don't have anything. Chief, you got anything? Everybody proud and happy? Dublin Friendship Association, Christina?
No updates since the last one. Our next meeting is on September 20th.
Okay, Council Roundtable, and I would just remind us, we do need to re-adjourn back to executive session following roundtable, so bear that in mind. Chris?
Sorry. I don't know if we're going to discuss the calendar this evening. Is it appropriate to have any input on that tonight?
Mike, what do you think?
I think it's a little early for that, maybe
Okay. It was
let
in our-
everybody digest it,
Right,
and we
I
can
just
get
put it
into
in
it
the packets.
maybe in
Just a
October.
chance to look at it,
Okay.
and
November,
talk about it.
yeah.
I saw that it was in
Yeah.
our items of
Right.
interest. I didn't know if we were ready for
I
that.
do
yet.
not want to have a meeting on the national championship game day, but that's a,
Every year, we have the same conversation.
That's optimism right there.
Yes,
In
it
its finest form. Couple things, had an input meeting with the Clarion Associates on October 24th, and I felt like it was a productive meeting, and I'm looking forward to, in short order, getting, we talked about some near-term goals and some longer-term goals, and look forward to hearing back soon on the near-term goals. Attended the CODA lunch on the 25th, and that was a very interesting time. The Street Bazaar, thought that they did a wonderful job. Historic Dublin Business Association did a nice job with their Street Bazaar on the 3rd, went there, and certainly they had a lot going on. It looked like a lot of opportunity for folks to participate. And on the 6th, went to the West Innovation District meeting at OU and saw a little bit of their plan, and look forward to them coming before us and presenting what they have in mind for their campus in short order, because it looked like there were some good things, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Christina? Thank you, Chris.
Just one really quick thing. I did have a couple of residents complain about smoking in the skate park, and I didn't know if there was any smoking litter that had been found or any evidence that that was going on. Can we kind of keep an eye on it?
From what staff has observed is, yes, there has been some smoking activity over at the skate park, and yes, there is litter to be found that is picked up on a daily basis. So We are addressing the problem with staff presence. Can't be there all day, every day, but on random checks, we are checking into that.
Thanks. On a similar note, has there been some additional follow-up on the Indian Falls, the folks in the water and the signs being spray painted over? And I just wanted to see if there's any follow-up on that. I mean, I know you guys were working to reestablish the signs and things of that nature, but I just wanted to follow up on it.
We haven't increased any type of preventive measures other than the sign and staff randomly going out for doing some checks and things. I think part of that is, once school starts, things tend to back off quite a bit, at least we hope so, and it has. We have been asked the question while we're out there where the swimming hole is, to address that and provide them a location of the Ballantrae Spray Park as an alternative. So, I don't know, Chief, if you have any more on that.
No, just that we've familiarized our officers who work that area about the issue and really haven't heard too much from parks. At this point, we think a lot of it has abated with school starting as well.
Is the skating park, is that a no-smoke zone? Are we allowed to do that? We're allowed to do that? That's not an issue?
Yes, that's a
Okay,
safety
so
hazard.
it's just an
more than it
enforcement?
is. From an enforcement standpoint, we have the ability to do so under a safety precaution.
Okay.
For a specific amenity, not for your particularly open air and parks itself without an ordinance in place.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Is that it, Mike?
Just one quick item. We got an extensive list of potential names for the bridge, and
Can I just say my favorite?
No, let me say first, I like this Scioto Skybridge Park of Dublin or some derivation thereof. So there's a lot of names in here, but Skybridge or whatever, it sounded kind of neat, so.
I'm plugging for my kids. I like Pokestop.
That's all I have.
All righty.
For the record, that was a joke.
Amy?
I don't really have anything to add to the good of the cause. Thank you.
Tim?
Nothing.
John?
Nothing.
The only thing I would sort of echo Tim's comments about the opiate addiction. Dr. Hoadley, who is when he is in charge of an issue, it is well attended. He is working on another forum coming up looks like it's going to be in early October with some relatively high-profile attendees that will, again, address the issue. So.
Greg, I talked to Doc Hoadley about this. You remember at the town hall meeting we had, there was an incredibly well-done brochure with rainbow colors, and it was directed to
Tons of information.
directed to the parents. I mean, it's one of the best I've ever seen about, these are the things you need to watch for. And I wondered if maybe we could even do a bed tax grant for ourselves or something in conjunction with the schools. They have it on the internet, but it's available on their web. But this mailer out to our public in general, I don't know what it would cost, but I'd really like us to look into this, see if we could do a program with the schools, maybe jointly, to get that piece of literature out to everybody in our area. Because it's not just those with kids in school, it's our whole community. And again, if you get I meant to bring one tonight, and I'm glad you raised it.
It has a ton of information about
just-
what to look for, and more importantly, what do you do if you find these.
And I think people actually read
Really
it.
great.
We'll follow up on that and find out how much distribution that has had or not had. And
Good. Yeah, I don't think it was ever mailed. I think it was done on web only, but I think Doc Hoadley was amenable to at least talking about it. So.
I know Chief's seen it, the document. So.
In that same vein, I was with somebody the other day, and there was some panhandling going on outside the coffee shop that we were meeting, and they were like, wow, that's a first for Dublin. And I know we're looking at some legislation, but I'm wondering if there is something that we could put together about resources that are available for those folks, so that when we have the opportunity to address with them about the panhandling, if we could provide them information about the food pantry and Welcome Warehouse and all of the different volunteer groups within our community that reach out to people that would be able to help service them.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, some of the examples we've looked at in different communities, that seems to be the best way to approach it, because there's very, very limited legal remedies to passive panhandling. In fact, there's really not any viable ones. So
I would like to have something to be able to say, this isn't, particularly with the firefighter that was just hit by the car. that was doing the Fill the Boot campaign, and it's not terribly dissimilar to that, and certainly want those people to be safe, and like the opportunity to say, hey, these are resources in our community that are available to you. This might not be the safest place for you to be.
And I mean, there are some specialized resources perhaps that could help us with that, but I mean, our officers have done some of that, and the thing we fight a little bit is that it's actually, in some situations, that it's working out at some level as a lucrative thing for the people who are doing it, so.
I just personally, I'd like to have something that you could address with them and be nice to have available.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, we are adjourned. Well, we're not adjourned. We're
Right. We're adjourning back into executive session for the 4 reasons listed. Again, a motion, yes, and then roll call.
Then I make a motion, we adjourn to executive session for
The 4 points previously
the
stated.
preparing for the conducting and reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation, other terms and conditions of their employment, and personnel matters related to the appointment of public official.
I'll second.
Second. Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
And Mayor Keenan?